On the topic of new pathways, I'd really like to take a more antiquated look at it, what might be considered an antiquated look, as opposed to rushing in with new techniques, new programs. The old idea of having a conversation about a conversation. I think old fashions are now in again anyway, right? So one of the things I think about is the idea that today's conversations are often in the education system we're having is that the value of education. And one of the scary things about that is that there's not an understanding of what that really means. What is education? I think for me, it's a matter of really looking at defining for the students that we have coming in. I look 15 years ago, as an example for former foster youth, 15 years ago, 3 to 4% of former foster youth were graduating college. 15 years later, we have new programs, new techniques, new innovative ideas, and yet 3 to 4% of former foster youth are graduating college. And so for me, it's really looking at what is a new pathway. A new pathway might be really sitting down and looking at the old way in which to do education system, that is to have conversations. An example of that would be looking at when conversations in just everyday society are happening around the value of education, is looking at helping youth to define, students to define what that means. Education in today's world doesn't matter what job you get, you're always going to need training. And so for me, the kind of conversations that I'm having at the college that I work at is looking at what does education mean? Education means ultimately training. And so if we're looking at the value of education and really understanding it to be training, then the question really is, do you want to get the training now so that you can get the job that you want later? Or do you want to wait and get into a job that you may not want and get some sort of training at some point so that possibly you can get the job later? And so it's really looking at defining what education means. For me, education means training. College means education. Sometimes there may be this new definition of college that we've got to take a look at. So as I'm approaching a new student that's potentially coming into my office, and they're asking about why should I need an education, for me, it's a matter of what are you looking at when you're thinking about going to college? We need to be looking at, or should be passing on to these students, the idea that college equals education, education equals training. And at one point or another, you're going to need the training to ultimately get the achievements that you're looking for. That's the kind of conversation that I'm looking at having.